Today we have a very special guest, Gina Hadley, who's the founder at The Second Shift, a platform redefining the future of flexible work for women. Gina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rohan. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I need to now dig into the LinkedIn growth platform. That was a very good lead in.
I appreciate that. Well, hey, would love to start off with, a super serious question. What is your go-to breakfast item to really get after it in the day and make sure you have energy to be of service to the people that you help?
It's a cup of coffee, some creatine, and I hit the gym.
Just getting right to it.
Getting right, the joke is that women of a certain age get sorted into houses when you hit midlife. And one is that you start protein and creatine loading. One is that you start birding. There's another one that I think is like big into crafting. But basically, when you hit midlife, we are all have now the messaging around how important it is to, build muscle and all of that for the future. And I am completely bought in.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Gina, when we initially spoke, I knew we had to have you on the podcast because you have such an interesting founder story. So I'd love if you can share a bit about your origin story, starting the business with The Second Shift and the mission behind helping the women that you work with.
Yeah, of course. So I have a very, I think, typical for a certain demographic of women career narrative. Well, first of all, I have a master's in Shakespeare, which is extremely useful at all times. I thought I wanted to teach. I taught for a couple of years. It scared the absolute pants off me. And so what do you do when you have MFA in Shakespeare? Well, obviously you go into advertising. So I found myself at the center of an extraordinary moment when IBM had taken all of their business and given it to one agency, which was Ogilvy and Mather. And so I kind of sat in the center of the creative department as an assistant seeing everything that went on. And one of the things that I saw was the ease with which freelance talent came in and out of the creative services at an agency. And as my career path started to become a little more circuitous, as I left New York and gave up that great agency job to follow my now husband to Seattle, Washington, which Seattle in the 90s was not Seattle of today. There really wasn't a job for me in agency life, so I had to reinvent. And I reinvented several times, and we moved across the country several times, and I had 2 children. And so every time I thought I had a handle on my career, something was thrown into the mix. So I created my own consulting business. And the hardest thing about having that business was sourcing the leads and getting the clients. So when I met my co-founder, we had the discussion about how many women we knew who had had years and years of experience in their area of expertise and found themselves for one reason or another kind of on the shoulder of what a mainstream career looked like. And so we started talking about it, and that's how the idea of The Second Shift was born. How do we enable these professional women who have spent their careers building this expertise continue to keep working when full-time work didn't seem like it was an option?
Okay. Yeah, I would love for you to expand on some of these unique challenges that your core demographic of professional women that they face based on different life events that happen that might take them out of the workforce, and how you help them really come back into the workforce and make things as kind of as easy and seamless for them as possible.
So one of the things that we focused on, Rohan, was a demographic of women who've never actually stepped out. So we think about when we launched in, now almost 10 years ago, the idea of flexible work was really an outlier. Even the idea of working with flexible talent for anything that wasn't in the creative services didn't seem like the norm. So we were already asking employers to think differently about the way that they thought about talent. So we realized that we needed to be able to present them with a slate of candidates that were the best at what they did. These were women who had never really taken any significant time off. They were just at this moment where they were trying to stay on, but maybe again, with the analogy of the freeway, getting out of the passing lane and maybe downshifting a little bit, but staying on their trajectory so that they didn't end up with some kind of giant hole in their resume, which a lot of professional women know it is a killer. It is the killer of what did you do for those 10 years or those 15 years, and getting back into the workforce is very hard. So we had partnered as we went through the journey of the second shift with reentry platforms, but we were never one. We were one for professional women who had continued their career trajectory, but we were helping them do it in a more flexible and on-demand manner. There are lots of reasons why women drop out of the workforce. It's gotten, since we spoke last time, I actually did a little bit of research. It's gotten better in probably the post-COVID years because there is flexibility. But if you think that 48% of folks entering the workforce are women, but only 26% of them make it to the C-suite or executive roles, there is something going on in there. And so our thesis was, if you can just keep these women working, if you can give them the opportunity to keep working in a manner that supports their life, then they won't have this giant gap in their resume. Lots of reasons we all know why women leave the workforce primarily is to continue the race of humanity. But there's other reasons as well. They're watching their male counterparts get hired more quickly. They're watching their male counterparts get promoted more often and more quickly. And then there's just other reasons. Caregiving is a big conversation in the United States, and what we see, the toll that it takes. We saw it during COVID. We saw what happened when we were given the intimate view of what a working woman's life looks like. There's lots of different roles that she plays, and we saw it firsthand. Employers saw it firsthand.
So I think it'd be great to illustrate with a couple of examples. Do any of the women or the clients that you've worked with come to mind of a story that you can share?
Oh gosh, there are so many. It's interesting. We did a segment on the Today Show, and it was my co-founder Jenny and one of our favorite members who had a child that had really, really serious health issues. And they lived outside of a metropolitan area, and it just wasn't feasible for her to commute into an office anymore. And so by joining the second shift, we were able to connect her with employers that saw how talented and how much expertise she brought to their companies without being a full-time employee and without being in person. That was one that her name was Carolyn, and she is still a member of the second shift, and she still works on projects. And there are thousands of stories like that in our membership.
So you've used the term membership. What exactly does it mean to be a woman and a member of the second shift? What's included there?
So we call them our members because the second shift is a highly vetted membership organization. One of the things that we discovered early on was this demographic of women, they were not looking for 10 tips on how to take the best profile picture, or they weren't looking for the kind of anecdotal information that a lot of services catering towards professional women were serving up at that time. What they were looking for was actual work and engagements. And so to be a member of the second shift means that you have access to the roles that we source from employers that are worthy of your expertise. And then one of the other things that's great about the membership is that we do have newsletters, we do have meetups, we have content, but first and foremost, we are finding active employment opportunities for our members because that is really what they're looking for from us.
Okay. Yeah, I love the idea of, the importance of speaking to these professional women as based on the needs and the highly strategic and detailed and also tactical and actionable information that they need, whether it's, kind of ascending at their current role or looking for the next role and not just setting them generic tips. Talk a bit about how you think about growing your own thought leadership and getting your message out into the world to increase your surface area and ultimately, your voice to reach more women and have more impact?
Well, one of the things that I think is essential to the way that I think about how the second shift functions is the time that I've spent building this company. We have spoken to hundreds and hundreds of employers, everything from Fortune 100 companies to owner-owned startups, to venture capital, to private equity. And what it has allowed me to be a witness to is that there are so many different ways to solve talent issues and so many different ways to bring our members into these organizations, but it is not at all the way that these companies think about talent most of the time. And so one of my missions within the second shift is to make sure that we are continuing to talk about flexible talent, different ways to solve problems, creating, if you will, a toolbox of resources that allow you to create a holistic talent picture. Not everything needs to be a full-time hire. Not everything needs to be flexible, but there are lots of different ways to solve problems, but we don't really, I feel like in the conversation around HR and talent, there is lip service to it, but it doesn't get down into the granular as to how to solve these problems.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like on one end, you've got this membership for these professional women, these candidates. On the other end, you're really educating these companies and HR leaders on how to think about placement and talent development, talent acquisition. And you've got this pool of highly vetted women as well. Maybe speak to some of the numbers and the data around what makes this such an important thing and the narrative that you have going into these companies, thinking about retention and really making sure that these women are set up to thrive and be successful.
So I believe we are not a one-size-fits-all company at all. So we approach the majority of our interactions with our clients, taking their needs into consideration. There's many different ways that we also interact with our clients. Part of the magic of the second shift is it is also a self-service marketplace. So we have clients who know exactly what they're looking for, who this member needs to be. We don't have to do an enormous amount of hand-holding. They understand how to write a real project description, which is different from a job description than what you're looking for when you're looking for a full-time role. They understand how to set KPIs and milestones for their flexible talent. And so that is a big part of our business. The other part is going into bigger companies and talking to them about how they can use flexible talent to support their full-time employees, use flexible talent to come in and solve problems that they don't have the access to in their full-time employee roster right now, and also create one of the things that we are very proactive about when we talk to our clients is the idea that, part of your benefits package at a lot of companies is family leave, is parental leave. How do we support those members of their full-time employees that are going out on leave? How do we support them by bringing in members from the second shift so that, number one, you get it maybe an outside, a different opinion, somebody to come in and fill that seat who has the gravitas to do that. You're supporting the team that's left behind by the person that is going out on leave, and the person who's going out on leave feels like they are supported and they are going to come back to a role that hasn't been sitting on a shelf for 6 to 9 months.
I see. Okay. And then typically, do you find that this flexible talent that's been, say, inserted for a period of time, do they stay on some percent of the time? Do they get hired more on a long-term basis, or do they kind of move on to the next project? What does that typically look like?
It used to be anecdotal that our members would stay on, but more and more frequently we are seeing, we like to call it a try before you buy. The idea that a hiring manager thought that they only needed somebody to solve one specific problem, and then they realized that she's solving lots of problems or fits into the team really nicely. A great example of that is we have a really cool tech company that is based out of London that is within the insurance industry. They hired one of our members for 20 hours a week, thinking that they would keep her for 6 months. It's been 18 months now. And so she may not be the typical full-time hire, but she is solving the problems that this company has on an ongoing basis. And I don't think they realized how much they would get out of somebody for just 20 hours a week that would solve these kinds of problems for them. One of the things that's interesting about the way that we look at talent is it's always a marriage proposal. Nobody dates. And so our thesis is sometimes maybe it's nice to date a couple of people before you figure out who you're going to propose to. Because once you get a full-time employee, that is a lot of investment. There is true value associated with that full-time hire, and not all of them work out. And so maybe there needs to be more dating before marriage.
Yeah, I love the idea of that. I mean, it makes total sense to me as a leader within a company where I get to, there's a gap that's going to exist. I get to bring someone in. There's a very specific, tour of duty or job to be done that they get inserted to do. There's an expectation that they need to ramp up pretty quickly, right? Because there's like a defined start and end time. And yeah, there's this kind of like dating period where it sounds like there's a lot of kind of like a culture fit analysis that you do just to make sure you're inserting the right person. They are also totally open to the opportunity. And it's kind of like an evaluation on both sides, right?
Yeah.
And there's like, it's a very, there's like this super huge commitment that is made that is irreversible. So that makes total sense from an employer and also like a candidate perspective.
I think so. I mean, it's very interesting that, we are still operating in modes of recruiting and hiring that has been around forever. And I would have thought that we would have learned more lessons during those terrible dark days of COVID, that we realized that there are lots of different ways for people to work. The pendulum has shifted so violently over the past 6 years, from hiring to firing to hiring to firing. What was it in 2022? We couldn't find enough members for our clients, and then the pendulum shifted again, and then everybody started to get laid off. And you think about, what is going to happen with AI, and it's, we can close our eyes and people can put their fingers in their ears, but change is coming. And
yeah,
I have an enormous amount of empathy for HR and talent leaders who are continually at the eye of this storm. And so we are hoping that we can give them a more total talent solution, if you will, around how to create their companies.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. We see there's obviously technological shift that's clearly underway. There's an increased focus on profitability. Companies need to do more with less. They need to augment their existing teams with technology to get the most out of them. So given that shift happening, how does your thesis at the second shift fit into this with flexible work, total talent solution? What is like the killer narrative that these executives and your clients buy into?
Well, so you and I spoke a couple weeks ago. We just announced on Monday that we were acquired by a company called Sinecure, which is really building a talent infrastructure for the future of work. And this is the perfect segue into talking about that. So our acquisition gives us the opportunity to be part of what we are calling this total talent solution. It is helping leaders make decisions that aren't only with one tool. So, it's the idea that it's a smarter way for companies to build teams, where your talent acquisition is adaptable, it's intelligent, it's central to growth, and it uses lots of different levers. We are the only company in the recruiting space that's created technology that's enabled what is now a collection of talent firms we specialize in on-demand talent. The other acquisitions are retained search, scalable recruiting solutions. We also So it's the idea that you can have a full menu that you can present to clients so that they can think about their talent needs, to borrow a terminology from tech, in a more lean and agile manner.
Okay. Yeah. So with this acquisition, what is that going to enable you to do? And how are you going to be able to better serve your existing members and perhaps reach new members to take advantage of this expanding suite of solutions that you can now offer?
So we can now come into clients and talk to them about more than just the on-demand network that we have. We can, join in a pitch for a global CEO role, and then talk to the head of talent or talk to that incoming team about what their upcoming needs are. How do they see their full-time employees flexing and contracting and constricting in order to kind of ride what you were saying, like the waves of profitability, the waves of companies trying to do so much more with less.
Yeah. Okay. And what is if you could have a message on a billboard in New York City or in San Francisco or one of these huge metro areas that your clients and HR leaders would drive past every day, what is a key message that you want to get out into the world?
I would think that the best message for us to get out into the world at this moment would be that there are many ways to solve talent issues, and to be open-minded and collaborative with outside companies like Sinecure and the Second Shift that are spending all of our time focusing on the future of work. And you go about the business of innovating the industry in which you are in. Let us take care of the innovation on the HR and talent side.
Okay, I love that. You mentioned you're building this toolkit of solutions. Are there any other, products or solutions or parts of the suite of talent development and HR that you're excited about either now or in the future, to make sure that you're kind of providing this full solution? Any sort of products in the roadmap that you're excited about?
Yeah, I am excited. I am still a novice, but Sinecure is building an AI agent to help in the workflow process that all HR departments, I don't care how big or small you are, is dealing with. But it's more than just, it's not a software as a service model. It all comes with expertise, in-house expertise of those of us who've been in the business of helping talent, HR and talent officers. I'm excited. I have to be honest with you. I told you, before when we were just chatting, I've been drinking from the fire hose this week, learning about all of our new tools, getting demos, getting onboarded. And the idea that our founder came up with that I think is really quite ingenious is that you can't have one without the other. You can't just have APIs talking to APIs.
Right.
We've seen a lot of the issues that go on of what happens when AI starts choosing your candidates for you.
Yeah.
And so what you need to do is, again, as you said, before, we need to figure out even internally how we use those tools and how we create products and services that will enable our clients to work more efficiently and take advantage of all of the different solutions that we can offer them.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I was speaking to another recruiting leader yesterday and talking about, how is AI and a lot of these automated workflows, how's that going to affect the space going forward? And he said, back in the day, even people thought applicant tracking solutions and that software would reduce the amount of human touch that might be available. Yes, it automates a lot of the initial screening and research, but it actually makes the human touch that much more important, especially once you are making the right recommendations, because if you can abstract away a lot of the complexity in the research, the human touch becomes increasingly important, and that is what is going to be your point of differentiation, right? So now if we see AI now taking away even more of that perhaps research and now providing some of that tooling and a lot of that, it sounds like the human touch is still going to be so important because that's what creates the discernment. You have the pattern recognition. There's so many things that you have based on your experience that is going to make sure that you're placing the right talent and you're understanding your client's needs. So that makes complete sense.
Completely agree. That is a great way of saying it. And one of the things that I continue to harp on is these are human beings that we are placing.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to remember that these are human beings with a specific skill set, with an experience, that bring everything that they've ever worked on, their whole talent history to every engagement. And that's more than just a simple product.
Yeah. So Gina, as we wrap it up here, what message would you like to leave with both, HR executives and company builders, as well as candidates? What are some of the questions you answer when you get on an initial call with these folks, and what can they expect to learn from you if they were to engage you for some help?
Well, I'll go with members first. We try to be as optimistic and pragmatic with our members as we can be. There's a lot of turmoil out there in the workforce right now. We're getting a lot of messages around how things are going to change. And we ask our members to focus on what they're best at, what they enjoy doing, where they kill it like nobody else does. And we do our very best to find clients that understand how to get the most out of our members. I would think that the message I would like to leave with our employer partners is we're in this with you. I've been doing this for a long time now. And let's be clear, this is not anything I ever thought that I would end up doing, having gotten my master's in Shakespeare. But this is the business of people, and there's lots of ways to build businesses, through capital, through product. But human beings are the most important tool that you have to make your business successful, as far as I'm concerned. And we're in this with you to help you solve all your problems.
Amen to that. It's all about humans and each other.
It really is. We're not selling widgets. We're selling people.
Right. Great. Well, Gina, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of experience and insights on this important mission with our audience. And I look forward to doing a part 2 at some point.
I would love that, Rohan. Thank you so much. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Perfect. Thank you.